We really thank you all for joining this IGEL Community Meetup. This is a little bit different than we usually do. Usually we're doing a tech training or a Q&A with this particular person. Today we have four guys on the line with us, including Sebastian, my right-hand man and partner in crime. And we're gonna have a Geek Speak. So the entire goal today is we do have a few questions or topic areas that we want to discuss, but also please, if you guys have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A piece. If you'd like to make a comment, please leave a comment and we'll discuss this too. So let's have a lot of fun and let's get going. So instead of me introducing everybody, we would actually like you to somewhat introduce yourself. And Sebastian came up with a great question where he'd like to know a little bit about you, right? So Seb, maybe you can ask the or share your idea behind this question about the IT job, and then we can go one, down the line and ask each of them. Seb, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we tried is to do some end-user computing question stuff, but besides that fact, we are not knowing so much of each other. So one of the first questions I had, and I guess every one of us has a different history, a different background. How did you went into the IT? I mean, what was your first approach with the IT in general? Was it on purpose? Was it by chance? Was it because you was obliged to, because you needed a job, or you were young and needed money? What was your motivation?
I'll start with that. I was born in Ireland, a long time ago, and my first computer was an old Spectrum 128K. I don't know if you guys remember those. And you used to load the video games from cassettes, like the old audio cassettes. And so I fell in love with that, playing a game called Brian Blood Axe. Any of the old guys might remember that one, but it was a terrible, terrible game, but I grew up on it. And my brother and I figured out how to splice the tapes together so we could play multiple games. And that was kind of the intro to my world of computers. I moved to Canada when I was 15. Where I am now in Halifax in Nova Scotia on the East Coast, and finished my schooling here. My schooling was not in IT and not in computer. It was in psychology and chemistry. That's my background. And all through university, I was working at McDonald's. I ended up being a manager at McDonald's for 7 or 8 years to pay for my school and, through high school as well. And all through that time, I was doing kind of side jobs, fixing, my mom's friend's computer. It wasn't really, when I say fixing, it was reinstalling Windows. And everyone thought I was a genius because I could do that. And that gave me enough confidence to, apply for a job when I had no real experience. And again, being old enough, the job posting, it wasn't on LinkedIn. It wasn't, any of the online boards. It was an ad in the paper, the local paper, the Toronto Star, I remember. So I applied, went for an interview, got a job supporting some local accounting firms. And I haven't looked back since. So that was the year 2000 when I first got my first IT job. And of course, all my education in computers now it's all self-learned. I used to have a pile of books back there, but they're all in the basement now. Who has books anymore except for Doug, I guess. So I got a bunch of certifications in IT, and I moved up in the world where I'm now a senior manager running a couple of contact centers in the East Coast of Canada. So that's how I got started.
That's interesting. I mean, I wasn't aware that you were born in Europe.
Yeah. We left Europe in 1989. Things were going really bad in the recession. It was just kind of kicking off there. My brother's a bit older than me, and my parents were worried about him having a job when he came out of school. So we had already family in Canada, so we moved to Canada, just for opportunities for the kids. But it's interesting though, kind of a side story away from computers for a second. My parents applied to emigrate to Australia and Canada. And the approval to come to Canada came just on a Tuesday, and the Australia one came on a Wednesday, and that's how they made the decision.
Damn it!
So I could be in Australia if the mailman was late.
Are you happy about Canada, or do you wish that you were in Australia?
You know what? I love those gold rush shows and how they mine for gold and all the snakes and the spiders and stuff. No, forget that. It's too cold here for snakes and spiders.
So you prefer grizzlies? Okay, got it.
But it's definitely easier to join the webinars from Canada than from Australia.
Oh yeah, everyone's good down there.
This is definitely true. We invited Carl along also, but poor Carl can never attend any of our live events because I think it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for him. And And so he's happily sleeping. I think he has foot surgery now too. His second one, the first one didn't go well. So for when Carl sees this, we hope you get well soon. René, since you piped up, maybe you can answer that question also. How did you get started in this world?
Oh, well, I'm old, as you know. So it started basically back in the 80s, I think, when I was a child. My dad was working for NCR. Do you know this company?
Yeah.
NCR, it was an American company, bought later on by AT&T, I think. And he was in the point of sales department. So he was
the scanners.
Custom in the stores and hotels and restaurants. He was a mechanic for the cashiers, and that's how I got in contact with IT, more or less. So I remember my first really contact was basically somewhere in the 80s when my brother and I got a programmable Casio calculator. You could write your own basic stuff on this little thing. And later on, my dad someday brought home a personal computer from NCR that was a all-in-one machine, basically. The green old CRT screens and two floppy disks, no hard disk, all in one, just the keyboard and the mouse attached to it. And this was our first contact with IT in the 80s. But then later on, I decided to go in another direction. After school ended, I began an apprenticeship as in an insurance company in the office. And there was basically just one computer in this office. The assistant of the big boss had one. So the secretary was the only one having a computer. All the others worked on the, how were they called? 3270 mainframe terminals, so to enter all the stuff of the contracts of our customers and those stuff. After the apprenticeship, I moved on to another location of the same company, and there they started to have IBM computers, and there was a IT guy there. Some IT supporter, and I became his left hand. Basically, it wasn't my main job. I was still in the insurance business, but helped him out with troubleshooting all those token ring stuff and network printing stuff. There wasn't network printing. We had those switch boxes everywhere, the parallel ports where you had to switch from two computers, which one want to print to the printer, and then we introduced it was based on OS2 basically. It wasn't Microsoft. All the stuff was on OS2, and then at some point I decided to go another way and become a teacher. So I started teaching and became a teacher and started in 97, 97, I think, with teaching in public education, higher education. Also there, a single computer in the office of the head teacher. And from there it started. And somehow, over the years, IT got bigger and bigger and teaching less and less. As of today, I'm still teaching 3 lessons a week, and for the rest, I'm the system engineer of our. It's not a university; it's a higher vocational school. So.
Can I ask which kind of courses you give? I mean, what kind of?
Yeah, I'm teaching. It's called Allgemeinbildung in German, so it's basically economics, politics, social studies, and all those stuff at the class of fashion designers, basically all women. This year I have no guys studying this profession, but it's just something that has really nothing to do with IT. So I'm not an IT teacher at all. It's just my 3 lessons a week. And the good thing is, because I'm teaching, I'm still teaching, I'm employed as a teacher, and now I'm in my spring break.
Oh man. Could be worse.
I don't like that you guys keep saying that you're old, because I think I'm the oldest one here. So it's not very, you're not that old yet. Not very nice of you all. And I hear that my audio is really bad. Is it still bad?
It's not really better, to be honest. Let's see. Just speak a little bit and we will see.
It comes and goes.
Okay. Well, that's welcome to my world of internet troubles. David, maybe we can do, well, there's 2 Davids. So Prows, you just said something. So you're our next victim.
So as you guys know, I'm kind of weird. So when I was 14, my goal was to be a CEO of a financial institution. Very weird for a 14-year-old, I'm sure. But I don't remember how I came to that. But so I started in high school working at a financial institution to start meeting goals to reach that step. And it was, my goal was by the time I was 30. I don't know, 4th year or so that I worked there, I was working with a vendor because I was a young guy at the credit union, and so I got to do all the tech stuff because I just kind of got it. And one of the vendors was doing some things, and I was working with him. He said, "You know, you should really get into scripting and IT because you know this stuff, or you get it really well." And so he got me some pirated software and some gave me some things to work with, and well, that was kind of the start of my IT. But so I think I was 20, maybe around 20 at that point. So I started going to school for IT, and it wasn't until I was 29. How am I? About 30. When I actually got my first IT position. I was still working at financial institutions, so I still am, but this happened to be at a conference, and on the way back, I was talking to an executive from another credit union that was on the way home from the same conference, and she said, "Hey, do you know anybody that'd be interested in an IT position?" Well, that became my job, and now 13 years later, I'm still in that position. Well, I've changed a little bit, but still with the same company, and that's how I got into IT. So,
just in case, how long did you, or are you working now for a credit union? How many decades?
For credit unions, I've been working 25, 26, 20, wow. Just over 26 years.
For the same one the whole time?
No, technically 4 different ones. I've had 3 different ones I worked for, and then the one I work for now, we merged in from the one I worked for prior.
That's huge. I mean, 25 years of experience in the same company. That must be extremely valuable to your colleagues, right?
Well, not the same company. I've been with, between this one and the one that I merged from, it's been 15 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I'd worked at 2 different credit unions. So, but all on the financial side. I've done everything from, tellering, all the way to loans, to collections, accounting. So, I mean, the accounting, those that do accounting and those that do IT, a lot of times the minds are very similar because they have to be very analytical. And so a lot of times I've seen several that have switched from accounting or finance type jobs into IT. Some of our other IT people here at the credit union, they actually have finance degrees. but they're decent at IT because they have, you know, that analytical mind to be able to think through things. So.
And when do you think achieving your CEO dream?
Well, that's kind of gone. That's gone by the wayside a little bit. But I know more now than I did when I was that age. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
You got the last, David.
Right.
Oh, I'm the last person.
We saved the best for last, David.
Oh, thanks. So my beginnings in IT, I've always been the youngest guy in the room. And everybody, like through the 90s and early 2000s, it was, oh, he's the youngest guy. He knows how to use computers. So I've always done a little bit of, I've been pretty destructive as a kid and as a teenager. So I'd tear every single thing apart that I would own, from my Sega Genesis all the way to a computer. So at that point, that's what really got me into computers, was it gave me the ability to get my hands dirty. And then I worked at Geek Squad for 2.5 years, working with customers when they came in, selling them services, and also doing some of the back end work on some of the machines that were dropped off. And then I started at Pittsburgh Mercy, where I'm at now. I've been here about 9 years. So we've completely disrupted the way that they're using technology. Myself and some people know my counterpart, Andrew, from all the videos that we do. And then also in IT wise is I've been a volunteer firefighter for 19 years. I'm also the president for the fire department. So I've implemented as much technology in that place as I absolutely can. Last night, I spent my whole night setting up our O365 environment so that we could communicate more effectively with people we work with in the community.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's get to some tech questions. So here's one I wanted to ask, and this is a question I get quite often. And that is, you know, now we're moving into, and IGEL talks about it a lot, you know, the DaaS world, right? The Microsoft WMVD or WVD, you know, Amazon, we just released Amazon support. What do you feel about DaaS versus on-prem? Where would you see DaaS as a solution? Where would you see on-prem as a solution? What are you doing internally in your worlds? You know, what's your view on DaaS versus on-prem?
My 2 cents on it is really a pricing argument. DaaS right now is just astronomically priced. WVD, I don't get the hype around it. You know, there seems to be a lot of, you know, hype, I guess, for lack of a better word. But the Workspaces product from Amazon, you know, it's, you know, pay as you go. I'm not sure how to do it in the WVD world, but comparing running, you know, 400 desktops in Amazon versus on-prem, even after you know, acquired all your hardware to do it on-prem, it's night and day. It really doesn't make economic sense for an outfit like ours to move to DaaS anytime soon until the pricing model gets in line, not back in line. So for us, on-prem and some hybrid workloads make sense, but not DaaS, you know, as a service or desktop as a service, I guess. And that's where we are. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree to you, Barry. It's the same issue for us in education. As you might imagine, we're dealing with a huge number of end users. So we're not the biggest school in Switzerland, but still have 3,500 to 4,000 students. Most of them part-time students only. So if you have to do, as it's common in cloud, in the DaaS space, do some sort of named user licensing, it blows you away from the numbers. So that's probably the main blocker. And if you're a bigger customer and already have your on-prem IT stuff in place and you have to maintain it, then it becomes difficult to move just a piece, the end user computing piece or the virtual desktop piece, out to the cloud, because there's no benefit. You still have your on-prem data centers, you have to run them. And as soon as your data gets split and the data stays on-prem and just the workspaces are from the cloud, it's basically a nightmare. One of the principles, I think Doug will agree, is you always should have data as close to your workspace as possible. And if you split it up, maybe it's different if you start a new business on the green field. Probably nobody will build his own data center anymore on-prem. If you can start over on the green field, why not? But for us, as of today, it's definitely too expensive, and we're looking in those hybrid approaches with Citrix Cloud, with Nutanix, running the workloads on premises and just the backplane from the cloud and so on.
Let me ask you a question, René. So you mentioned Citrix Cloud. I don't get the value in that either. Having them run, your brokers, your controllers, your database for what we see as a ridiculous price. So it's the same argument for the other products I mentioned. The WV is just overpriced, if you ask me.
At least for us, it was possible to go to the Citrix Cloud path, because they're now offering some concurrent licensing for the CVAT service. So we run the workloads on premises on our Nutanix boxes on-prem, and just manage them from Citrix Cloud. And there's the interesting part, not so much the couple of VMs that you can get rid of, but you don't have to care about them. You don't have to patch them. You don't have to look after them. And what I see with Citrix, but not only Citrix, I think most of the development of those big companies goes to cloud first. Mm-hmm. And if you want to stay current, if you want to use the latest and greatest, there's basically no other way than follow this approach and move to the Citrix Cloud. You can still do Citrix on-prem. There are industries that have to do it, like financial services in Switzerland, insurance companies as well, public government. But if it's possible and you want to get the latest and greatest, there's no other way than following it to the cloud. That's
I would add to that. I mean, we're kind of in the same boat. So we have Citrix Cloud, but we do all the workload on-prem. Mainly, the workloads stay on-prem mainly because of what Barry mentioned. It's the price. But for the Citrix Cloud, for us, we have basically every product that Citrix offers. Not totally, but their main, ShareFile, Zen Mobile. I know they have new names, but so we use those big. And when we switched to them 4 years ago, the price was the same at that point for us to go on, whether we did it on-prem or whether we did it in the cloud. Now, since then, it's the price has gone up a little bit, but it's still not horrible, being that we don't have to manage it. We do keep our storefront servers on-prem at this point, but we will soon move to Workspace soon, probably within a year or so. But it makes it easier. But as far as DAS, I see that as for small organizations that don't have IT, that don't have a data center, don't have anybody to manage the stuff. Then it kind of makes sense to do that versus having somebody come in and do it on-prem. It just makes it easier. It may cost them a little more than having it on site, but it's going to be easier for them. But for larger organizations, I think, unless they get a really good deal somewhere, it makes sense to keep that on-prem.
It would be interesting to me to know what if there was maybe sometimes a kind of cultural difference between countries, because I know that healthcare, like an example in Germany or let's say in Central Europe, is extremely cautious when it comes to data privacy, when it comes to data, where the data is stored and which kind of data set is it outside of the company. And I'm not sure sometimes if it's really related to our mindset or if it's related to the branch, like because it's healthcare, because it's personal data, because it's health data. Is it the same in the US? So David Faynor, in that case, what is your thought on that? I mean, where are you storing your data?
All of our data is on-prem.
Okay.
Our whole environment is on-prem. I like the idea of desktop as a service, but we've invested everything into on-prem. Desktop as a service wasn't a thing at that point when we started buying all of our hardware, but we're also in the process of migrating into our parent company. So wherever they're going to go is where we're going to go.
Makes
But
sense.
they're also
No, please continue.
They also are looking at us as a guinea pig, where it's, well, how are you doing things? What would you recommend? It's very different than what a normal migration or integration of a smaller organization would look like.
Sebastian, as someone that's lived in both, the U.S. and now EMEA for a while, there is a lot of cultural differences between American IT and European IT, 100%, in my opinion. And that's from where we store the data to how we deal with users. It's really across the board. Definitely big cultural differences. You know what? I want to ask one more question before we get to the next question. And that is, Sebastian, we forgot you. Everyone knows who you are in the community. And how did you get started in IT? We can't forget you.
Man. Let's go back in time. So when I was in France, when I was, let's say, 8 to 18, I always was interested in computers. So I got my first computer, a really old one, like a little bit like this one that René mentioned, with this all CRT, with this, I can't remember the name, there is a name for that, but it's green retro activated CRT. So that was the first time I got in touch with IT, and I was always saying, I want to work in that direction, but I wasn't really good in math. To be honest, I was a real nightmare, I guess, for my teachers. And I'm still being a little part of it. So I couldn't really do what I wanted, but I went through the part to get, I don't know how to say it in English, to be honest, but Buchhalter. So it's something related to figures, to data, to finance. And it wasn't just what I wanted to do, but it was the only way to get in that direction. And when I was 18, when I passed my my baccalaureate, so my kind of first degree, I moved to Germany to make to start working in a support job, data analyst job, and then I went to a, let's say, German bookstore IT job, and then I moved from one department to another, and that was the first time I got in touch with IGEL. I was responsible for the stores, for the IT inside in the stores, for the service desks for 3 countries. So it moved a little bit during the time, but I was always in the IT, and I'm still a nerdy person at home. I tried to count how many devices I have at home. Just being computers with a Raspberry Pi, ended up in having about 20 or something like that. And I'm pretty sure that some of our attendees have even more. And the next step, I would catch up David Prows on that one, is a 3D printer, because that's definitely one step I'm missing actually, and I'm missing it really hardly.
But you still have no Twitter handle yet. You should change that.
I'm working René, explain to Sebastian that Twitter is a lot of fun. It's not all the gossip in it, but the tech side of Twitter in the EUC community that's on Twitter is a lot of fun. There's some really great stuff going on there. Wouldn't you agree?
For me, it was the door opener to the whole EUC community, I think.
Truly.
Everything started on Twitter.
Wow.
You got to move over.
Especially just a privacy thing for you. You don't want to be on Twitter, or you don't care for social media, or
Exactly.
Oh.
I'm not even using Google, to be honest. So the first step for me was to use Office 365 from a business perspective. I was thinking, how can we put our data on a data center somewhere on the earth without having any kind of control? And now I'm saying, oh, okay, come on. I'm encrypting more as everything, and it's blocking so much time in decrypting every stuff that I'm saying, okay, come on. This picture can be uploaded there, and I'm thinking, okay, that was the first step into the nightmare of my personal nightmare. But yes, data privacy was the main purpose, and yeah. But I'm changing my mind a little bit.
I really like that. I keep telling Sebastian, you got to get a Twitter account. You will really fall in love with. There's so many great conversations, and just follow Claudio, and you'll have a blast. But there's everybody is up there. It's just great. Absolutely.
I will.
Absolutely.
I promised.
Yeah.
Even LinkedIn, I promised.
Stay away from the politics. Stay away from the celebrity stuff, and just hang out with the EUC guys.
Why that? That's the most interesting part. I was expecting to know how the Kardashians are living.
I think that's what's that photo site? Instagram. I think that's on Instagram. So anyway, the next one is your question. You get these one for these guys.
That's great. Thank you for that. It goes a little bit hand in hand with the question I asked just before. I mean, it's a really simple question, but I guess the answer took the last 25 minutes. How is your company dealing with end-user computing security? And the question is not, we don't care, or we care and we do a lot. It's more, how are you dealing, especially with IGEL, or especially with Windows devices? What about your cell phones? How are you dealing with updates? I mean, last year was really a pain to get so many different patches, VDI plugins, unified communication clients deployed, but I can say at least we didn't care so much about the security anymore. It was just pushing out communication method, and we will look at the security in a second step. How are you dealing with that kind of situations?
I can take this one first. So for us, that's a big reason why we use IGEL for our endpoints. We're down to just a handful of laptop users that haven't been converted over to IGEL. All of our desktop users have been, desktop PCs, that is. Our laptop users, anybody new that's getting a laptop gets an IGEL laptop. Just a few that we just haven't. It got delayed because of COVID. They already had the laptops. Just go and we'll deal with getting everybody else on what they need to. But that's a big part of that. We don't allow, even on those that are on PCs, we don't allow them to save anything locally outside of some of IT, because we can store ISOs and such. But any kind of member data has to be stored in the data center. Even our share file stuff is all using on-prem storage, which is a big reason why we like them over OneDrive or anybody else. It's all on-prem, so it's the big deal. From the desktop standpoint, I mean, everybody has to connect back into the credit union to access anything. I mean, even those that have PCs, they're using Citrix apps, so they have to connect back in to get to data. It brings up the point of, why do they even have a laptop or a Windows PC? That's a good point, and that's why we're switching them. But the security is that's one of the big questions that comes up with pretty much everything we did or do, including when we went with Citrix Cloud. It was we had to look at what data was stored in there, and if Citrix Cloud was to get breached, what data could they get, and what access would they have to our network? And there's not a whole lot. We have a lot of monitoring going around those connections to Citrix. It's fronted by our firewalls, it's heavily monitored, and we have to watch that traffic a lot. So yeah, that's kind of our feeling on security.
So for us, we started looking at replacing our Windows 7 machines as it came to end of life with something else. We did have a big system center environment for patching Windows 7, and we're a very, very small IT group. So we got to thinking, you know, are we spending the right resources, right amount of time, you know, managing Windows? And then we started looking up, you know, for thin client vendors, and along came IGEL, and we invested in that. So we started deploying IGEL at the desktop as Windows 7 machines aged out. And that was a blessing in disguise for us, because so long comes COVID, it was literally a matter of, you know, picking up the device, sticking it in someone's backpack and sending them home. You know, after the fact, we went back and enrolled everybody in with EMP licensing so we could do the remote management. And it was just a quick profile change before they left. Instead of connecting to our internal storefront, now they connect to our NetScalers. And I saw someone in the Q&A ask if you're doing 2FA, and we are. We use Duo, Cisco Duo, or I think Cisco bought them. So they put in the credentials, pops up a push notification on their phone, they approve it, and then they're logged into our storefront environment from home. This has really, really simplified our environment, because now we're only patching workstations that are in the data center. You know, we have two main images. The server OS is part of our RDSH farm, and our Windows 10 image. So we'll pop those up once a month, patch them, redeploy them, we're done. So our patching now takes half an hour versus, you know, the good old days in SCCM when it would take days, if not weeks. So from a security perspective, you know, I think we're in a good position, and a lot of that has to do with having IGEL in place for the last few years.
I guess I'll piggyback on what Barry and Dave said as well. Over the last 3 years, we've really been pushing to get IGEL in as many places as I absolutely can. As we started migrating away from Windows 7 to Windows 10, I really started pushing the staff and the IT staff into, whenever you come back to me with, oh, this can't be IGEL'd. So, and then I go back with why. And every time we've gone back and said that it cannot be IGEL'd, we've been able to find out that it has been able to be IGEL'd. Our Citrix environment now is down to one gold image. So that's about 1,200 people using one gold image across the whole organization. We're 98% IGEL, IGEL'd endpoints. We have like 150 Windows devices, and it's just, I haven't had the time to touch them yet. In the future, I'm pushing towards 100% IGEL'd endpoints, and that's how we're handling security.
But then let me ask, guys, I mean, we're speaking about IGEL, but especially this multi-factor authentication stuff. Did you went through the process already before COVID? Did you went during the COVID phase? I mean, last year, April, May, June, July, or did it come afterwards, after the bigger deployments, or let's say the first rush of teleworker situation? Because I can just speak for Germany, I guess, and maybe for some part of Switzerland too, but teleworkers weren't such often accepted in companies. So all that security related teleworking coordination was a little bit hard to handle here in Central Europe. Is it maybe something, I don't know, René, on your side, how it went, but it would be interesting to know how you dealt with that.
Yeah, fortunately for us, we had it in place already. So we decided a couple of years ago to have Microsoft Azure as our main identity provider, and wherever possible, we try to leverage Azure AD as the identity provider to log on to Citrix Cloud, to log on to SaaS applications, so on. And for this reason, we implemented the self-service password reset feature together with multi-factor authentication enrollment. So basically every user that enrolls and gets his accounts, be it a student, be it a staff member, has to enroll into the Azure AD MFA, be it for self-service password reset or for multi-factor authentication. And fortunately, we had it in place. But with the students, we discovered they're switching their phones and phone providers like other people, their underwear. And so really a lot of them, when we had to go into distance learning, had switched their phones and deleted the authenticator app, or had switched to new phone numbers, and haven't been up to date because we had configured to approve or to set the actual number only every 180 days. That's basically the default setting. So we lowered it now to every 30 days. You have to confirm it's still your active number. It's still the MFA app you have set up and is working. So, but thankfully we had it in place, and it made it easier. Also for the whole security discussion we had. Azure AD gives you a lot of technology besides of multi-factor authentication. There's something called like identity protection. It surveys how and from where users are logging in, and if there is a suspicious login attempt from Australia and half an hour later from Northern America, the account gets blocked, and if you switch your devices, you're prompted to do a MFA, and so on and so on. It's amazing to see what's possible these days.
Wow, great! Thank you very much.
Yeah, for us in MFA, we've had MFA for external users for at least 4 years. I think longer than that, but I know for at least 4. Later this year, we'll be implementing it to everybody, even in our branches. So they're not looking forward to that, but it's one extra step. But from a usability standpoint, or from a security standpoint, it's kind of needed. So that's where we're headed, and we're moving more and more things to SSO, kind of like René mentioned. But we're not using Azure for our IDP, but we're using a combination of a couple of things. But any of our websites that can handle, or even systems that can do SSO, or we're switching all those over, so people don't have to manage passwords and that type of stuff. So, but MFA will come along with that. So.
From an MFA standpoint for security, as we're in the process of migrating all of our staff to our parent company's Office 365 environment, and as we do that, we're getting them to enroll in MFA and start utilizing it for outside access to our systems as well.
Makes sense.
Perfect. Boy, we just have about 12 minutes left, and sort of transition into our last question, and that is around IT trends. And maybe we can say, what do you see as what's trending, or where we'll be in the next 2 to 5 years within IT? Definitely, COVID changed a lot of things, but what do you see as the trends in the next 2 to 5 years?
Going back kind of the start of the conversation, I kind of bashed the whole DAS concept because of the pricing, but I think that actually is going to become a thing in the next 3-4 years. I think they might get the pricing model under control, where it's viable for larger organizations that are on-prem today. What else could be in the future? I'll leave it at that for now. If I think of anything else, I'll chime back in. But I think DAS is going to become the real deal in a relatively short period of time, because of everybody being forced to be remote. COVID pushed us all remote, but I don't think we're ever all going to go back to an office again. Even our company, we're probably going to go back to a 50-50 model, 50% home, 50% in the office. And so remote solutions are going to become more and more important, and I see DaaS playing a big role in that.
And I kind of take a different perspective on that. I think the desktop and I know it's been said for years, but I think more now over the next couple of years, the desktop's going to go away. More and more systems that we use are going to SaaS, and they're just a website you go to access them, instead of having to have a local install of them on a Windows machine. So I think that the traditional desktop as we know it today is going to go away. And the IGEL endpoint or Android or whatever mobile device you have will be your desktop, and you'll just be accessing a SaaS app. There's still legacy apps, but a lot of those legacy apps can't be used with very efficiently with DaaS until they're rewritten, and at that point they might as well be a SaaS app. So that's kind of my take on that. Other trends, I'm not sure. But other than things just moving more SaaS.
So I'm going to throw this way off the boat. I would say VR and AR is going to start becoming a thing. I just started working in VR a couple weeks ago, and it's like a game changer. But I also agree with some of the stuff that Dave and Barry said as with the SaaS apps. Our staff are now utilizing their IGEL endpoints as a desktop when they don't need to go all the way in Citrix to access, sign the time cards and things like that, like basic tasks.
Let me ask David one quick question before you continue. What do you mean by AR, VR? Like, explain that a bit as in terms of use case.
So, the one thing that I've been doing lately is using my Oculus Quest 2 as multi displays, which I can utilize. I can remote into like my laptop. So no matter where I'm at, I can have as many monitors as I need. Immersive just added a new feature so that it used to be a pain if you would get a phone notification, but now you can stream your phone screen and your monitors or your virtual monitors right into your session.
That's crazy.
So,
okay.
And that's overload.
Sounds like witchcraft.
The best part about it is it's so unnormal now in a workplace that if somebody comes into your office to interrupt what you're doing, they have no clue how to interrupt you because you can't see them, you can't hear them, and there's no like nice way to, hey, without scaring the person.
Yeah, it's quite amazing what's possible in this space. We got the luck to get our first HoloLens maybe 12 or 16 months ago, and when I put them on for the first time, I was blown away. So and
Game changer.
Possibilities are really, really, really huge, I think. So for me, it's maybe that's also a part of it. One of the biggest things for the future is the customization. What I mean by this, I think our end users are familiar with all those shiny new devices, be it smartphones, tablets, and amazing graphics and smart TVs. And in business, we have to look after them and give them the tools they know from their consumer devices, basically. So you can't get them a completely locked down workspace where they not allowed to right click or whatever to customize their environment. It's not gonna work because it was different 10 years ago, probably. They were really happy to get a fast computer from the employer and didn't care about it. And today, if I give them a computer, they compare it with their shiny devices at home and ask me, but my iPad can stream Netflix without struggling, and why doesn't this work in my VDI session? So you have to give them the user experience they know from their private devices, and that's a big challenge, I think, for the future.
Sebastian, what do you see? What's your view on this?
Honestly, I'm not a good visionary. You can say everything that I am seeing in the near future will never come, and what I'm not seeing will come for sure. So I should think about war everywhere, and I don't know, just to save the world. No, but honestly, it's hard to say. What I would see is an endpoint independent solution, because at the moment I'm not thinking that this Mac OS, Windows, and Linux operating system discussion, and even if you speak about Android and iOS, then will hold 5 to 10 years. So that's would be my vision, to have a kind of, it might be in the direction of what David already said, in the direction of AR, VR maybe, that you don't have to think about an endpoint anymore like we are seeing it at the moment, but more something completely alternative. So I was thinking about some docking station with integrated operating system that would release everything by using Thunderbolt or USB-C. So that would be my vision. But like I said, I'm not a big vision yet, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Seb.
No, go.
Well, I like what Barry said, is that, today I don't see, I think the cloud is very expensive. It's a big myth, is that you move to the cloud and things are cheaper. That's not reality. But there's something out there that's always changed things for everybody in IT and everyone in the world, and that's Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law, the idea that things get faster and cheaper. And I think that law is as alive as anything we know. So, and I also think COVID changed things too, right? So, IT is now forced to look at digital transformation, forced to rush to centralization, rush to the ability for disaster recovery, rush for the ability to work in all scenarios. And centralization, the idea of remoting, as I like to call it, helps that. SaaS helps that. The cloud helps that, right? And I think Moore's Law will drive down the prices of storage, drive down the prices of virtual machines, drive down the prices of SaaS delivered resources in general, and they'll get fatter and better. So I think it'll be an incremental changes in the next few years, but those changes will be geared towards moving towards the cloud quicker than we were. The other thing is, I believe that IT changes not necessarily because they want to, but because the vendors require it. So in other words, Citrix Cloud, we have this conversation about Citrix Cloud, right? Barry doesn't see the value. I sort of somewhat agree with him. But we don't have a choice. The choice is, do we want to stay up with the latest of Citrix? Then we're going to move to Citrix Cloud, right? If we want to stay with the latest from Microsoft, then we're going to move to WVD at some point. So, I'll leave it at that. I think Moore's Law and COVID is really going to be the driving force in the next, 3 to 5 years.
I cannot say something else. Let me ask one last question, because we have 2 minutes left. And after this, I would say, quite complicated question, I would come back to something more easy to answer. Can you remember, I do, which IGEL product was the first product you hold in your hands?
I know it. I just looked it up in my email archive. It was 2012 when we ordered our first UDC converter licenses, those licenses that came on the USB stick with the smart card embedded in it. It was 2012.
So for me, it was this. It's a UD Pocket that was handed out at Synergy. Game changer for me. Now I've scraped some things off of it because I now use it as a
mass storage
converter. Well, no, to to convert other IGEL devices, but it's not a UD Pocket anymore because the license ran out on it after like 6 months. But that's what got me into IGEL. I was playing around with this, and I'd seen IGEL at Synergy for years, and had looked at them and like, just another thin client company, and just kind of passed it off. I thought it was kind of neat. You can convert old devices, but that really, but until just a few years ago, and when they were handing these out and you could actually play with it, I had no idea what. I think same way with most of the world. Had no idea what they were missing. So.
But that's interesting. So 2 persons until now are used to learn IGEL by using the not hardware related stuff. So you are the OS creator or UDC in the past, and you, David, by using the UD Pocket, or let's say the early version of the UD Pocket demo. So David is holding a thin client in his hand. Was it your first device?
So the UD3, the N340C, was the first device that was handed to me by one of our vendors. But it was not the first time I used IGEL. So that's a lie. I did a demo of this in like 2013, 2014. It then went on a shelf until 2018 when I was on vacation. And Andrew calls me and goes, our finance department is completely infected. What do I do? And I said, well, lucky for you, I'm demoing IGEL. I have the whole POC environment stood up. Go put these UD Pockets in these computers and get everybody in Citrix and get them all back online. So that was like 2018 was right whenever we started making the big change to IGEL.
Okay, so
my first IGEL device was this guy. I don't know if you guys can see that. This is how IGEL used to ship. IGEL used to ship licenses on these, and inside the USB here is a little SIM card, and that's how you license your devices. Once many moons ago now, well, I guess that's not that long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and when that was OS 5. So I still have this thing. I carried it around in my backpack for some reason.
It's the same like René mentioned. And the fun fact that you had all the license on that smart card, and there was a little smart card driver you could install on your Windows PC to retrieve the license balance from that. So the fun fact, so more or less every one of you met IGEL as a software vendor more than a thin client vendor, I would say, right? Okay.
Yeah, because we had a lot of still very capable devices in place.
Sure.
It didn't make sense to throw them out, but converting them was a big benefit. And we have still 10-year-old devices running Windows 10 virtually now.
Yeah, we own 0 IGEL hardware thin clients. It's all converted devices.
Yeah.
That thin client is the only. That thin client's the only IGEL hardware device that I have in the whole organization.
Wow. Well, what we say is that the genius is in the software, and the hardware is, I wouldn't call it commodity because we do have great hardware, but it's really about the ability to put IGEL everywhere, and you guys prove it. It's also interesting to see some of our top guys are new guys too, right? It's not that you've been using it for 20 years, but that you found it, loved it, embraced it, extended it, and that's fascinating. So, yep. I had friends over at IGEL, so I'd always stop by the booth and say hello to them. My sales guy from Citrix, way back in 2003, he went to IGEL, so I'd stop by and talk to him and sort of stay up with it. But I'd play with it a little bit. I walked into IGEL in Fort Lauderdale when they had a Fort Lauderdale IGEL, and they showed it to me. That was probably 2005, but I didn't really do much with it until I really joined IGEL. And then I was like, wait a second, this is more than I ever gave it credit for. It's amazing software. Really kudos to the Germans that built this stuff. Amazing software. And that said, we're 4 minutes over. So guys, I thank you all Sebastian, as always, a thank you. I really enjoyed this. We should do more of these, and a lot of fun. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to chat with us and share some of your insights. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I apologize for my video and poor audio, but someday, once I get off Vodafone and move to telecom, then I will have decent internet again. Let's hope. Sebastian, any last words?
No, it was really fun. It was my first session like this, to be honest, and I really enjoyed it. I must admit I was a little bit excited, and now I'm excited, but a little bit happy too.
Well, then we did a good job. We made Seb happy. So that's great. That's great. Well, thank you all again.
Yeah.
Now, if you guys can all stick around and help me get my dual monitors working on my new MacBook, I'd be very happy.
It's Mac.
That's easy.
I'm going to be switching. I'm going to be switching cables. I don't understand why it doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Welcome to the life of having every dongle necessary to connect up anything you need to do.
Well, this is the problem, is I have so many different cables and so many different dongles that I'm trying every single possibility except for the right one, obviously.
Just link them all together. It's what I have to do.
Yeah. Even have a brand new docking station. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Thank you all for joining. Thank you guys for being a part of the panel, and thanks everyone for joining. We'll get this thing posted right away. So if you want to hear their awesome comments again, you can watch it later or tell a friend. And also one last thing is we do have a deep dive webinar coming up, I believe next week with Sebastian. It is next week. And he's going to do a part 2 of what, maybe you can give a quick brief thing on that, Seb?
Yeah, sure. So in short words, we ended up last time by pushing some topics back to the next one. So like tweaking around the XFCE graphical user interface. I just posted a few things in the community chit chat section regarding stuff that you can bring back to the UMS regarding your endpoint metrics. That's few topics I will cover out in that session. And beside that one, how to use post-session command and firmware customizations in, let's say, in a little bit more elaborated way.
Perfect. So we'll see you all Tuesday. On that note, have a great night, have a great Friday, and a great, wonderful weekend. Thank you all for joining the IGEL Community Meetup.
Only Thursday here.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.